Roger, how are you today?
Well, I've just yawned.
Okay, so where are we? Why are we here?
Where are we? I don't know where we are. Some bit of what's it called?
Southwark Crown Court.
Southwark Crown Court, yeah.
And
facing charges of criminal damage without lawful excuse, with the emphasis on without lawful excuse, regarding putting washable chalk onto the walls of the Grand Hall of King's College during King's College climate emergency campaign 2 years ago.
Okay, so how's it all going? Do you think that the judge is against you? Do you think the prosecutor... What are they saying? What are their best arguments?
Actually, I'm not sure whether I can talk about this.
I won't put it out until afterwards. It's not live streaming.
Well, assuming this doesn't go out until afterwards, what did you ask me? Well, how's it going? Well,
yeah, how you feeling? Did you represented yourself, right?
Yeah, we represented ourselves as myself and David. We're in Crown Court in front of a jury. What can you say? We presented various arguments that we weren't intending to create damage, and the King's College accepted that we should have divested. Everyone shook hands afterwards.
So hold on. Oh, sorry. Let's start again. What's the background? What happened? What you've been charged with?
Put spray chalk on the slogans and dots and what have you onto the walls of King's College as a non-violent direct action, and that led to King's College divesting from fossil fuels, helped along by a hunger strike by myself for 14 days. But the upshot of it is that the King's College management accepted it was a good idea to divest. They did divest. It was a major victory. It was very fast. It happened all in about 5 or 6 weeks. Everyone thought it was done and dusted. They agreed they weren't going to press any charges. There was no disciplinary action. We agreed we weren't going to do any more direct action on anything at King's College. We didn't. Went over to LSE instead. and then a year and a half later or thereabouts, the Crown Prosecution Service took it upon themselves to decide that what we had done was illegal, and about 8 months later or whatever, we're here in front of in Crown Court.
Okay,
so here for 3 days.
Okay, so you protested the university's divestment, their investment policy. What was your problem with it, and what was the result of your protest?
The problem with it is that the fossil fuel companies are engaged in a psychotic desire to destroy the human race by continuing to put CO2 into the atmosphere, and we think that's not on, to put it mildly. And as part of that, we wanted King's College to divest from this criminal activity, and as part of that, proportionate action was taken, which was to put washable chalk onto the walls of King's College. And the result of that was, as compared with 5 years of conventional campaigning, sitting on committees, doing petitions and what have you, it won the objective within 5 or 6 weeks. So we can say, I guess, that the causal factor here was direct action.
Okay, so when you say you won, they divested. They took their money out of that stuff.
Yeah, they agreed.
Have they taken it out already?
No, they agreed to divest by 2022. So in other words, when all these stock market things come up for renewal, they'll take the money out and put them into, non-fossil fuel funds. Okay,
so they'll have pre-existing contracts with certain funds to manage their money.
Yeah, if you take it out prematurely, you lose loads of money and what have you. So from a certain point of view, that's fair enough. So the upshot of it is they agreed to divest entirely from fossil fuels by the date by which everything's basically come up for renewal, which is around 2022. But they also agreed to have a carbon neutral King's College by 2025.
And they're using that to sell their reputation, aren't they?
Well, obviously, they live in the real world, don't they? So everyone's out to make a buck. So they're making goes without saying that they've got posters up saying how great they are, that they're doing the right thing on the carbon front.
One of the arguments used against you was that you spraying crayon on a wall, chalk on a wall.
Crayon.
One of the arguments was that it didn't have an immediate effect, because your defence is, I'm trying to protect the world by spraying the crayon and changing the investment policy. So they said, what immediate effect does spraying the chalk have? And what was your answer to that? I heard it. It was brilliant.
Well, the answer I said in court was that there is an immediate issue because hundreds of fossil fuel companies around the world are engaging in the prepared slaughter of the next generation for removing their means to grow food, and so there is an immediate danger that has to be dealt with because it's going on every second and minute during that spraying of the chalk on the wall. However, interestingly enough, like we've had some lawyers' advice, and it doesn't actually matter whether it's immediate or not. The main issue is necessity, and if your act is proportionate to stop a greater evil, as it were, to quote the law, then your action is justified. So the main issue, really, as I see it, obviously it's all a bit of a no-brainer, but the main issue is, does climate change exist? Is it going to, is burning of fossil fuels going to lead to the collapse of the Arctic ice cap and the melting of the ice? Well, obviously it is. Is that going to lead to the latent heat effect? Obviously it is. Is that going to lead to the collapse of the jet stream to the extent it's not going to be possible to grow food? Almost definitely. If you haven't got food, does that mean people starve? Yes, that's a pretty direct relationship. If people starve, is that bad and evil? Undoubtedly. Therefore, it's like a no-brainer that direct action should take place to save the next generation from the greatest crime in the history of the human race.
You used the term diffuse and extreme yesterday. What did you mean when you said that in relation to immediacy? Because I think they said something like, how is spraying chalk? Crayon. I can't remember.
Chalk.
How is spraying chalk on a wall going to help a plant not get built in Nigeria? And then you both came out with some brilliant answers. What was the diffuse and extreme thing in relation to immediacy?
Well, I think I was saying diffuse because the criminality of the fossil fuel companies is obviously distributed across the whole globe. So the criminality and evil, as you might say, is diffuse in so much as it's happening in lots of places. But another characteristic of it is it's extreme in so much as it's putting the survival of the next generation into question, or arguably making their demise inevitable. So the extremity, I suppose, overrules the diffuseness. Whether something is diffuse or not isn't really the issue. The issue is it extreme? What's the total sum of the evil that's being enacted, rather than the distribution of it?
Although they were trying to say it depends on where it is. They were saying if you're defending property, someone else's, or you're damaging something in order to protect something else, they were trying to say it's got to be right next to you. They said the example of a wall. Yes,
well, as we know now, that's actually just technically incorrect, because the House of Lords has said that you've got a right in law of necessity of action if the emergency or the criminality or the evil, whatever you want to call it, it doesn't have to be immediate. It doesn't have to be like the wall next to you. It could be something more diffuse, but as long as it's extreme, then it's the case. So, I mean, all this is rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, we're navigating old laws.
Well, we're navigating the stupidity of narrow-mindedness. So this is, what part of the legal system is addicted to.
Okay, so getting back to the fact that you did this at a university, I think one of your arguments was this is also in relation to freedom of speech. You said things are contested at universities all the time. It's an internal matter. They're used to it. So, why can't we leave it at that?
Yeah, well, that would be the sensible thing, wouldn't it? It's just it's the rough and tumble of university life. University life, at least traditionally and increasingly, is a matter of students, testing various boundaries and making their views known, and rightly or wrongly making large claims and working that out. And that's part of what you might call our political existential sort of education, and it's to be encouraged, and any sort of liberal educational process should encourage it, obviously within a certain degree of limits, but the act of putting a bit of chalk on a wall is neither here nor there within the larger scheme of things. And of course the university accepts that, because that's why they didn't discipline us. If we'd gone on and sort of hung device principle, then obviously that might be a bit more serious. But we're in the realm of faffing around, really.
Okay, so next you've got these European elections. How do you feel about them? What's your point? Why are you doing this? Do you want everyone to vote for you?
I think our slogan is "Don't vote for me," which has a nice surreal ting to it, doesn't it? Tinge.
I like it. Going back to identity politics again, are we? Okay, so.
We've got a lot of light now.
Fascinating.
You have to be quick because I've got to go in a minute.
Okay, so you're
well,
saying
the upshot of the European elections is really, really very straightforward. The European elections, it's £5,000 support per candidate. You get a lot of publicity because the media is always looking at the candidates, and we're going around doing direct action to highlight the gross criminality of the climate emergency and the complicity of our institutions and political institutions in this process of the genocide and next generation. So it sort of stands to reason that it's a moral imperative for us to use whatever platform that exists in order to bring the truth to the British public, as it were, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, so in terms of getting people to change the way in which they live, there are some people that say that this is just a front for massive austerity. There are other people that say, because you have to do less of certain things.
Yeah, well, that's an easy one, isn't it? You go to the doctor, he says you've got to go on a diet, otherwise you die. So you've got choices: go on a diet or die. So yeah, the choice is austerity. Yeah, there's going to be lots of lower living standards in inverted commas if you want to be into reductive materialism, but the alternative is die. So it's just a question of looking at the science. It's not a political thing. But
it's authoritarianism. That's how some people are going to say it. That's green authoritarianism, where you basically say, I'm afraid your limits to this, you can't do anymore.
It's the same when you're in a doctor. The doctor says to you, you've got to reduce your intake of fat and sugar. The patient can say, well, you're forcing me to do it. Well, the doctor's simply saying it doesn't matter whether I'm forcing you to do it or not. The fact of the matter is, if you don't do it, you're going to be dead. So it's your it's your choice, really. That's the choice before the British people and people around the world.
Okay, so look, I'm not trying to be difficult here.
No, I know you're not. I'm just saying, it's just a bit of a it's a bit of a sort of fantasy debate. It's a bit like politics can trump physics.
So can I give you the real...
It's not like anyone saying, I like authoritarianism. It's just saying, if you don't rapidly reduce carbon emissions, you're going to be dead. So, either we do it in a sort of relatively civilized, liberal-esque sort of way, and everyone agrees with it, or someone will come along and do it in an authoritarian way, or we'll die.
Okay,
so, take your pick.
Okay, well, I'm not trying to be nice here. I'm trying to ask difficult questions. So,
go on then. Ask another difficult question. Throw one at me, because you've only got one or two more questions. You'll have to rush off.
That's fine. I understand. People treat me like that all the time. That's how I like it.
Okay. Give me your worst.
Okay, so I've got 2 words for you, mate.
Oh no, that sounds like it's going to be abusive.
Yeah, it is. It's enforcement procedure.
Enforcement procedure.
Yeah, so basically when you have transparency and basically people saying, they've declared their interest, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing this, they're doing that. So let's say it's CO2, let's say someone's over polluting, blah, 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 blah. You go to the doctor, they say you're out, you're living beyond your means, blah, 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 blah. Fine, the info's out there. How do you then get them to behave? I mean, abstention may not be automatic.
No, well,
Is there going to be an enforcement procedure? Are people going to go around there saying, stop fucking doing it?
Of course there is. Yeah,
right,
it's called the rule of law.
But you reckon the coppers are going to come around and say you've been naughty? Because we don't live in that culture now, do we?
Well, hopefully,
everyone looks the other way, don't they?
Hang on a minute. Let me reply to your question.
Yeah, please. Excuse me.
This isn't enormously complicated. It's the polluter pays principle, which is if someone's going to wreck the environment for other people, then they shouldn't, and in so much as they should pay compensation. So the process which we need to go through is perfectly compatible with some sort of liberal rule of law system. I mean, it's not necessarily going to be like that. If you leave it too late, then you will have some sort of nasty authoritarian solution. So the only issue here is how fast we get on with it. But no one in XR is suggesting that we revert to some sort of Stalinist austerity. We will be in a Stalinist austerity scenario, quite possibly, if we don't get on with it. There's only really one issue, which is to do direct action, which has been proven to be the most effective way.
Yeah, but you're doing it for a reason. You're doing direct action for a reason, so that's what I'm asking about. What's coming next?
Well, we're doing it in order, as you well know, we're doing it in order to open up a political space so the people of Britain can decide what sort of future they want, and that that opinion will be mediated through a citizens' assembly selected by sortition, where a randomised selection of the British public can come together, deliberate on this predicament, and then decide the best way they want to proceed. It's not for me as a Democrat to actually prescribe what the outcome of that will be. Obviously I've got my own opinions, but the main point that I'm involved in is to create that political space, and as a campaigner and direct action designer, I'm of the opinion the most effective way of doing that is mass participation, civil disobedience.
Can I tell you what I got a problem with in relation to some of this?
Yeah, it's the last question.
Yeah, this isn't... okay, well, I'd like to...
Make it your worst.
Yeah, well, I'm not limiting it to one, but the discussion...
It does have to be your last question.
Yeah. So basically, where's the discussion happening in relation to these ideas that you can recommend for people to go and participate?
Which ideas are we talking about here?
For example, you said we'd like to do public disruption in order to create the space for conversations to happen.
Yeah.
So where are these conversations happening that you know about, that you can point
the
people
conversations,
towards?
obviously conversations,
you know, pre-General Assembly, pre-sortition, whatever. Where are these conversations happening? Is it YouTube? Where?
Well, they're happening all over the place, aren't they? You know, maybe 10 million people have had a conversation about climate change in the last 4 weeks, as a direct result of 1,000 people getting arrested in Parliament.
Yeah, but what I mean is that, so for example, in the newspapers and the BBC, they're talking about it much more. Fine.
Yeah, they talk about it there. So that, I mean, the whole system's interconnected, isn't it? So people are talking about it, you know, in their homes. People are talking about it in public spaces. Newspapers are talking about it. Social media is talking about it. This is all good. This is what needs to happen. And what the final sort of, the fundamental aim is that will lead through to a willingness of the political class to engage in an independent citizens' assembly.
What about pensions?
You asked me another question.
Yeah. What about pensions? Are you interested in that anymore? Or because this is obviously a divest case, so pensions I think is very important.
Well,
but do you
know, if pension schemes and people involved in pension schemes want to lobby the pension schemes to actually divest from fossil fuels, so obviously that's all well and good. These things aren't mutually exclusive. You can't have 10 pages of different ideas that are great when you're trying to run a campaign. Just reduce it down to those three. But they're not, they're not exclusive to really worthy campaigns around divestment and pensions and what have you. What we're saying is, though, on balance, it's a good idea to, bring the capital city to a halt to the extent is necessary for the political class to come to its senses and have a national assembly for the British nation, as it were, to decide whether they want their kids to live or die. I mean, this is not complicated stuff.
Roger, thank you very much.
See ya.